Getting hit in the balls sucks, but for some guys, some pain, even when it comes from a tap on the testicles, is pleasurable. I'm Dr. Rena Malik, board certified urologist and pelvic surgeon. And today we're diving into a topic I get asked about constantly in my DMs, but that most doctors won't really touch: ball busting, or as it's known in the kink community, cock and ball torture. In this video, you're gonna understand three critical things. Number one, why testicles are uniquely wired to create such intense sensations. Second, the actual science about pain and pleasure. And third, what ball busting is, and if you use this practice or decide to try it out, what you need to do to stay safe. So let's start with the question everyone's thinking. Why would anyone find testicular pain pleasurable? It seems like something most people would want to avoid at all costs. And to answer that, we first need to understand why getting hit in the testicles is so uniquely awful compared to injuries to other body parts. So first of all, your testicles are developed very differently from any other structure in your body. During development, your testicles are actually in your abdomen, up near your kidneys. And over the course of fetal development, they slowly descend or come down through the body into the scrotal sac. Now, these original nerve endings that are up here near your kidneys, they follow the testicles all the way down into the scrotum. And that's why when you get hit in the testicles, it doesn't actually hurt just there. You actually feel it in your abdomen. Sometimes you can have nausea or cramping inside the belly. And your testicles are really just covered by a sack of skin. It's very little protection. Now, there's a reason behind this. Your testicles need to stay a little cooler than your actual body temperature in order to be optimal for producing sperm and keeping them healthy. Also, I suspect that testicles are designed to be sensitive because you need to keep them safe in order to reproduce. And evolutionarily, it makes sense, right? If they are sensitive, you will be more thoughtful about keeping them safe. So how does anyone's brain actually reinterpret pain as pleasure? Well, it's based on a little bit about how your brain is wired. Your brain doesn't have like two separate filing systems, one for pain and one for pleasure. Both of them, pain and pleasure, activate similar brain regions, and both can trigger a dopamine release, but the transformation of pain to pleasure is sort of dependent on multiple different factors. First is expectation. When you anticipate something that you think is going to be positive, so if you think that this is going to feel good, you've actively chosen it, and your brain gets a preemptive reward signal. Basically, what that means is it changes how your neurons process the incoming stimulus. And scientists have seen this in brain imaging studies. Second, it appears that people who enjoy pain tend to have increased activation of certain pathways in the brain that tend to inhibit pain, particularly when they're in the context of BDSM play. Third, when you're doing sex play that incorporates pain, it actually impacts your brain chemicals. So when researchers look at people who do BDSM activities, they find that people who enjoy pain show significantly elevated levels of endocannabinoids, which are essentially chemicals in your brain's reward systems. And they see more of these after pain play. And these chemicals are essentially fine-tuning your dopamine system, making experiences feel more pleasurable, and it reinforces them. Hey, I like this, let's do it again. The brain also releases beta endorphins. So you've heard of endorphins, right? These are chemicals, and in this context, they reduce pain perception and contribute to a feeling of euphoria. And ultimately, this together makes your brain feel like, hey, this is really rewarding. It also activates oxytocin, which is a bonding chemical, and vasopressin, which is involved in social attachment and arousal. Now, the fourth factor is there's psychological dynamics at play, right? For people who identify as submissive in these scenarios, or guys who are getting ball busted, there's intense arousal that comes from relinquishing control over their most sensitive and most vulnerable body parts to someone they trust. Whereas people who identify as dominant, the neurochemistry is different because the psychological experience is different, right? They are not the ones experiencing the pain directly, but they're experiencing the satisfaction of being entrusted with control of someone else, and they are enjoying their partner's reaction to that. And lastly, there's just individual differences, right? Some people's nervous systems actually crave more intense input, right? Some people like roller coasters, some people like risky things, and so some nervous systems find powerful physical stimulation compelling during intimacy. And this does appear to have somewhat of a biological basis because there's variations in pain threshold. And BDSM practitioners tend to have higher pain thresholds, and that may be due to maybe genetic differences in those endocannabinoid systems and receptor density that may impact the perception of pain. So what does ball busting or CBT look like in practice? Well, there's a huge spectrum ranging from really mild to very intense stimulation. So on the gentlest end, we're talking about activities that couples might not even think of as CBT, like light squeezing with their hands, soft tapping, temperature play with warm compresses, or even cool temperature, right? Cool objects, gentle stretching, soft binding with fabric. And these are sort of creating novel sensations, but there's really very little risk. Now, when you go into more moderate intensity, you've got firmer hand squeezing, you've got flat-handed slaps with, controlled force, using padded tools that are designed specifically for BDSM, like paddles or soft crops, maybe even foot pressure, and maybe even ball stretchers that sort of apply weight or gentle elongation. Sometimes people will use cock cages or chastity devices that create sensation through restriction. Now, at the more intense end, people are striking with specialized tools that have forceful impact. This is where we're getting into real ball busting, wax play, electrical stimulation, and other advanced techniques that essentially I am not equipped to detail here. Quite frankly, if you are looking for that type of intensity, you should be learning that technique from experienced BDSM practitioners in the kink community. Now, most people tend to stay in this gentle to moderate range, which from a medical safety standpoint is relatively where I'd like you to stay, because you're going to avoid serious injury to your testicles, because things can go wrong. Normally, if you're participating in cock and ball torture or CBT, the sensation would feel intense during the activity. There might be a mild aching afterwards, and typically that goes away within a few minutes, at max an hour. You might see some slight redness that fades pretty quickly, and everything gets back to baseline, right? Where you were before. If there's an injury, it's going to be very different. It's going to be sharp, stabbing. That pain is going to amplify. It's not going to get better. It might even stay red or hot. The pain is going to amplify over time rather than going away, and it's a real red flag if you can't do normal activities like walking or moving around because of pain. Now, there's 3 serious injuries that if you suspect may require emergency surgery and you need to go into the hospital. So I need you to know how you can recognize them immediately if they happen. Number 1 is testicular rupture. This is when the outer layer of the testicle, called the tunica albuginea, tears. And you'll know because there'll be sudden extreme pain, rapid swelling. Now, this is an emergency. You need to get to an emergency room because you are going to need surgery to repair that testicle. Number 2 is hematocele. This is blood pooling around the testicle. This creates major swelling and discoloration. The scrotum might be dark, purple, or have irregular patches of color. This also requires evaluation because if it's expanding, if it's got a rupture associated with it, or if there's a lot of pressure around the testicle, it can affect blood flow and it might require surgery. Third is torsion. This is when the spermatic cord, which is essentially the blood flow and the nerves and everything that holds the testicle in place, twists and it cuts off circulation. And this can happen if the impact is really intense and it actually twists the testicle. So you'll have severe one-sided pain. You'll often have nausea. Sometimes if you look at your testicle, it might look like it's kind of sitting in a different angle compared to the other side. And you need to get to the hospital because roughly after about 6 hours, you start having changes to the testicle and it could actually die. It's a true emergency. So what should you look out for? Swelling that keeps growing rather than staying the same, skin turning dark purple, deep red, or developing patchy discoloration, vomiting or severe nausea, any deformity that you can see or feel, any bleeding or open skin. Now, beyond acute emergencies, this is something that I think people really need to pay attention to. That there can be chronic issues from repeated impact. So when you have regular trauma to the testicles, especially if it's pretty significant, it can affect sperm production and testosterone levels over time. If you want to have biological children at any point, now or in the future, this matters. Sperm production is very sensitive. And any trauma can temporarily stop production. And when there's repeated trauma, you could have a prolonged reduction in sperm production or maybe infertility. If you still desire to proceed with ball busting, there's a few things you have to do. One is consent. Make sure you and your partner discuss everything before it happens. What are your boundaries? What do you want? What are hard limits? And what are activities that are like basically completely off the table. To establish either a safe word or a signal, you need something that is universally recognized to both of you, or however many people there are, that means stop immediately, and a sign where maybe if you can't speak, you can at least give a signal. Next, you want to make sure you're educated on what techniques you're going to use and how you're going to use them. Generally start with gentle things and slowly build your intensity as you feel comfortable. But again, note all the things I talked about earlier. Next up, communicate. Guys, you have to communicate throughout the experience, whether it's verbally, non-verbally, doesn't matter. And lastly, never leave someone who is bound, gagged, or otherwise incapacitated unattended. You gotta make sure they're okay, they're feeling fine, they're not feeling sick or unwell or in significant pain. Now, if you are using sustained pressure of any kind, or a device that uses continuous pressure, like ball stretchers or tight bindings, you need to release them regularly. Tissue needs blood flow, right? And so when things are constricted for long periods of time, you can start having what we call ischemic injury. That's tissue death from lack of oxygen. So for most of these, I would say check and release about every 15 to 20 minutes at a max. After every session, look at your body. Make sure you look at the area carefully. It should be symmetrical, the color should be normal, there shouldn't be any unusual swelling or firmness, and the tenderness should get better with time. And never combine painful play with alcohol or drugs. These will impair your judgment and dull pain signals, which are both collectively really unsafe. I also get a lot of questions about chastity devices. These need to be properly sized. If they're too tight, it can cause that tissue damage. If it's too loose, it can cause chafing. And generally, if you're going to ask me, I'd recommend getting adjustable or silicone-based devices rather than those sort of steel, inflexible devices. And make sure, of course, to take regular breaks so you can allow for normal blood flow, prevent jock issue from, sweat buildup and other skin conditions. Lastly, and most importantly, if you are having an issue, please don't be afraid to get help. I understand people will often delay seeing a doctor for anything related to their genitals because they're embarrassed and they don't want to talk about how it happened. But let me tell you guys, as a urologist, I have seen everything. There is truly nothing you can tell me that will surprise me, shock me, or make me judge you. My job is to provide medical care, not to judge your personal choices. And I'm not saying you're going to have a perfect experience, right? I've talked to many patients who've had a bad experience because people are not all great doctors, or they might not realize that they're unintentionally saying something that made you feel uncomfortable. But your health is always a priority. So please don't wait until it's too late to get help. And lastly, remember, we're bound by confidentiality, by HIPAA, meaning that your sexual practices are protected health information. No one besides you or your doctor will know anything that you tell us. Bottom line, cock and ball torture or ball busting is adult sexual expression, and as long as it's done consensually, safely, and you know the risks, it is okay to continue. Please know that repeated trauma can affect testicular function in the long run, and look out for signs that you need to get to the emergency room for a serious injury. That's it. As always, remember to take care of yourself because you're worth it.